The first lay reader I met, yes, I can remember, probably about 20 years ago. A chap called Ivor Richmond, he's dead now. He'd been a lay reader for quite a while then. I used to love him because he was such a nice chap, very warm, welcoming, very encouraging, and we had quite a bit in common. He was a scientist, I'm a scientist, and we had lots to talk about.
Sure.
And he was always there when needed. He was very good at comfort and also answering difficult questions, or at least posing questions that I could think about myself, which may help me to answer my own questions, if you see what I mean.
Yes, the first reader that I would say I remember was the reader in my church, St Peter's, Richard. And he was, because at the time I joined, we had a period of vacancy at St Peter's. The incumbent vicar had left, and we had a vacancy. And Richard was one of the elders who had sort of taken over leading services and you know, just basically keeping the church going and ticking over. He was who actually did the baptismal service for my daughter, or the Thanksgiving service, because the Thanksgiving service that we had in the church there for my daughter. So I had a lot of interaction with him then over that period. And one of the things, you know, about Richard was just his way. He in St Peter's, he does a lot of work with the elderly. He goes out and within Stevenage there, and goes out to meet the elderly people, leads services for them, Bible studies and things like that, supports them in so many ways. And he just has a heart just to serve, you know, people in the community. And, you know, just seeing his life and the way he's conducted himself and how he's well loved within St Peter's was something that was quite encouraging to see. And like I said,
for years, I've always had a feeling that God was calling me to do something, but I didn't know what. And me, I run from things. So this voice was telling me you should do this training or look forward to challenges, but I just kept running in the other direction. And God finally caught up with me about 5 years ago.
I didn't want to become a reader. Somebody suggested it to me about 5 or 6 years ago, and I put it off. I thought, no, my first instance, I hadn't met the joyful lady then. My first reaction was, I don't want to do anything serious like that. It will tie me into the church structure. And that was a huge worry for me. I'm a bit of a rebel, and I don't like conforming, and it was a huge struggle. It's almost as if God in the end had to get hold of me and keep tugging me, and in the end it was almost as if I had no choice, in the best possible way, of course.
Sure, okay.
But more than just academic, it was life-changing for me, the study, particularly from a background which is fairly fundamentalist in regard to scripture. Right. That's just an example. It opened my eyes. It helped me become much more liberal in a good way.
Well, tell me about that, because sometimes, from what you're describing for your background, you might have felt threatened, or actually people might have warned you should take training like this because, shock horror, you might become more liberal. What was liberating about that?
Well, it was, it's a bittersweet thing. You think, well, is my faith going to be affected if, for instance, the scriptures are being questioned, the fallibility of scripture, for example. But to hear learned people talk so intelligently in terms of interpretation of scripture, context, etc., application, and also, for instance, feminist theology. That was the first time I've heard it, you know, and then to think outside the box, quite unsettling. And my faith did go in a bit of a dip, and then it sort of was strengthened.
Well, strangely enough, you would think that the theology and all the reading and knowledge about liturgy and worship and everything else would be the best thing. But for me, that hasn't been. In fact, that's some of it's been a bit of a slog, although I love reading. But when you're reading for a purpose, it's very different. But for me, the best thing has been the formation, the fact that you hardly notice it's happening, but very gradually you start to be formed. Some of it's a bit uncomfortable and a bit painful, and you start to be formed into the sort of person that you think God may be able to use. And I'm not sure that formation would have happened without this 3 years of reader training.
I feel, as a reader in training, that we're sort of more closer to the congregation, and we sort of speak at their level, perhaps, and I hope that, it's just the ordinariness. We're just ordinary people. We haven't been to... there's a way we speak as well, an everyday sort of language.
It's their contact with the wider world, because they will have a vast range of experience with all sorts of people, and clergy are possibly within a smaller circle, so it's that contact with ordinary people.
I think it's being able to use your own gifting and have it as totally voluntary. And by that, you don't feel you have to be paid, or, and there's less pressure in a way, but more opportunity. But also there's loyalty and support for the team, for the vicar, for the rest who do have those sort of constraints.
Yes.
And so with your freedom, you're more able to help the rest of the team.
I think it is being the bridge person, being a lay theologian, and looking at things from outside the church. And I think that's a voice that the church needs. It can be very inward looking and parochial. People think all church is like their particular parish church. And sometimes you can get so bound up with church that you forget that we're actually supposed to be making a difference in the world outside. And I think readers can do that very well.
A lot of difference. I think it's a reader provides a different voice, a different perspective on issues people in the parish are facing, a different theological opinion. They can lead services both within their own parish and hopefully across a deanery when there's a need for somebody to step in. They are not the vicar's little helper. They are people with a ministry in their own right, and hopefully readers and incumbents, parish priests, work alongside each other as a team.
I think they're an enormous asset. It's another person using their skills, their gifts, to complement the work of clergy, to complement the work of laity, and they preach and teach, and that's a great gift. And often they can pick up roles that are very specialist and play to their particular strengths alongside their day job or their other commitments, and it just extends what can be offered in a parish.
It's really exciting to watch people grow and change over 3 years. I think people quite often start with a certain amount of anxiety. Can I do this? It's going to be a lot of work. Am I in the right place? And then 3 years later, you stand with them as they're being licensed, and the bishop says, are these people of good training and sound character? And I look at them and I think, gosh, you've stuck with training through illness in the family or death in the family or a job change, and you've been faithful and formed, and now you're open to going where God calls you in. And so that's just the best moment.
I just think it's an absolute pleasure to see them grow and develop, to follow their ministerial path. And having supervised readers in training in my own parish and working with them, it's just so lovely to see them being licensed and released into the next part of their ministry.
I think it's another way of seeing the vast variety of the Church of England. Sometimes you get somebody who comes from a tradition that's very different from your own, and you think, I wonder about this person. But then you see what they bring, and the gifts that they bring to the church. And it's also so encouraging that people still want to come and do this. It says the rumours about the church dying are very much exaggerated.